The Church at Home is a program highlighting topics that affect the church in the modern world, here in the Diocese of Youngstown and beyond. Your program host is Father James Korda.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Church at Home. I'm Father Jim Korda. Today we're going to talk about vocations, and joining me in today's show is Father Chris Luoni, who is a vocation director for the diocese. And Chris, I'm so happy that you're on our show today.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
When we talk about vocations, let's try to focus it in a little bit on vocations to the priesthood
Sure.
and religious life. But when we talk about a vocation, what are we talking about specifically, as opposed to a career or a job?
Correct. A vocation, simply put, is a calling. Not just a calling, it's not mom or dad calling, but it's a calling from God. And with that, we can break it down, first of all, into one of four areas. There's the vocation of marriage, vocation of religious life, vocation of single life, and then vocation of priesthood. But there are other vocations as well. Sometimes a career path that one takes, whether it be priesthood or doctor or working at whatever place it may be, it can be a calling from God. Parenthood is a vocation. There is a call from God for man and wife to bring forth children and become parents. Even sometimes hobbies. I've seen people that have taken a hobby, a calling, a gift, and have turned it into a way of life. And so anything that we do where we know that God has been with us, that He has helped us, and that through that work that He has helped us with, that gift He has given us, we are able to take that and further the kingdom, that goes back to a calling.
You know, when we talk about someone receiving a calling, specifically a call to priesthood, those come at different stages in a person's life. For example, in my experience, it came when I was in the latter years of high school.
Sure.
For some people, it comes in the earlier years, in early grade school. For some, it's well after their own careers.
Correct.
Can you explain the different stages of when a call comes, and is that unique? Is that the same, or what's your experience?
Well, it really is a great way of looking at the way God works in our lives. I've had and seen men who have received the calling at a very young age, 7, 8 years old. And they have lived with that calling and carried forth that calling, and some now are very good priests. But I've also seen men who felt that calling at first, but have moved on to other places because the calling dissipated over time. There are those who are called to, like you said, sometimes right after high school or in high school. They feel that they move directly from high school to a college seminary, then to major seminary, and so they're ordained at an earlier age. I know for myself, I received a calling I would say I was probably in my mid-20s almost. And I kind of put the calling aside. I had my own wants and desires. Building the career, having a wife and children, a nice house, and everything that goes with it. So I kept pushing it aside. So not only is there the aspect of that calling, and it does come at different stages of life, which also tells us that God knows what's best for us. He may give us the calling early or latter, and He stays with us, and He helps nourish that calling, and hopefully we accept it. My calling came, like I said, in the mid-20s, but I didn't enter the seminary till I was 34 years old.
Which brings me to another thought, and that's the whole process of discernment.
Yes.
You know, we go through that in preparation for our vocation, is to discern what exactly is God calling me to.
Right.
How important is that process?
It's extremely important. If we do not bring God into the picture, we can very easily fall into the wrong place. For example, previously I was pastor at the Newman Center at Kent State University, and one day I was talking with a young man who had been working for us, and he talked about how the girl he was with, he believed he was called to marry her. And so I asked him, this is a man who goes to our church with great frequency. He was involved in several things. And I asked him how his prayer life has been around marrying her. And he says, I've never given it consideration with God. I've never prayed about it. Here he is making a most major decision in life, and he's trying to make it himself without the help of God. Unfortunately, that's where a lot of people go off track, is they forget to put God in the equation of any decision that has major importance in our lives. And because of that, they can sometimes fail at what they're doing, or they can sometimes find unhappiness in what they're doing, a sense of, I'm not fulfilled in this particular place. When they open up to God, they find that fulfillment and that happiness.
Well, we know that the role and the presence of God is primary and fundamental.
Correct.
In responding to the call. What about the role of others, the role of the example of priests or parents or grandparents in fostering that whole sense of call and priesthood?
That, again, is also vitally important. A great priest who has been a mentor and model for men and women alike will help them in whatever place that God calls them to be. Speaking with seminarians today, they can always tell you, well, this priest was always a good model of my life. This priest I always saw as a man of God. This priest had a great sense of humor. This priest reached out to my family. And there's something that they see in the priest that really touches them, and they remember that. And they want to carry that on. They want to live like they live. But we have to be careful as well, because if a priest is not in the best place, if his own prayer life and spirituality may be suffering a bit, then it can show to the people he works with. And then others can say, well, the priest isn't happy, so why should I want to follow that way? On another side of that, parents are vitally important with a young child's formation, and as they grow, as they come through high school and even into college. One of the aspects I always found interesting is that, again, at the Newman Center, talking with young men and women who would speak to me and say, I'm unhappy, I would always ask them, well, what major are you in? And they'd say, well, I'm doing such and so. And I said, are you finding fulfillment in that? Do you love it? And they would say, no. Then why are you doing it? Because my parents want me to. When we look specifically at the priesthood and men going into the seminary, the number one reason why men do not enter is not because of the celibacy issue or marriage or money or loneliness or many other factors. The number one reason is parents. I've heard the stories of parents who literally said, we will disown you if you go into the seminary. One mother who went on a hunger strike until her son gave up the idea of going into the seminary. So parents have a great influence on their children, to the good or to the not so good. And understanding when it's not so good, they're standing in God's way of their son's or daughter's call.
That brings to mind my own personal experience. Obviously, there were priests that were instrumental in fostering and encouraging me, but of course my parents were fundamentally involved in that because they were involved in their church, and I think that's at least priests in my era. Our parents were involved in church. Our parents were encouraging. The priests were also that, but we are in a different time.
Yes.
We're in a different space.
Right.
And so that whole discerning of God's call, not only personally but also encouraging others to do that, has become increasingly difficult.
It has.
And I think obviously the changes that are happening within church, within society, within institution is all coming to play in that.
Correct.
So how important is it for someone who has discerned that they want to be a priest, how important it is for them to be kind of like steadfast and rooted in that decision? Because there's so much out there that could waver them and change them.
There really is. There's a lot of noise in the world today, a lot of influences, and as we know, the media is a great influence to say, hey, this is the way you should live. And sometimes what we do as priests, people consider counter to what the culture should be. And it's not. it truly is living out God's gift. So when we work with men and women as well who are feeling this calling, this attraction, this want, this desire from God to live a certain life, we offer them as many tools as possible to help stay in that way, to help them understand that whatever comes to you is a distraction you need to pray through. You need to understand and work with and ask God's help. Is this a distraction that's pulling me away? Or is this your way of actually helping me understand that maybe this is not the place I belong? And so we use different methods, one being prayer, discernment groups, different literature and books that will help a man or a woman discern, is this where God wants them to be? Retreats. And I've worked with many men who over time they say, well, Father, they say one day I feel that call very strongly, and then another day something seems to be pulling me back. Working with a man who said he was all ready to apply, and then he met a young woman. And so now he's very torn. Where do I go? What do I do? And so just little things along the way, the encouragements, the personal relationship that I've established with that individual and all the other men discerning, as well as other relationships between priest and family, will be vastly influential. And so we just try to help them realize, okay, you have all these different things on the plate. Let go of the things that truly don't matter and just follow God. Follow Christ through the storm. As Peter was walking on the water, he had faith in God. But when he thought of himself, he started to fall. It's only when we don't try to control the storm and let God do the work through the storm that we will get through that. And that's why it's vastly important to put Christ first.
We have about 2 minutes left in our time together. If someone is watching and interested in pursuing the priesthood, what would be something you would tell them to do?
Well, of course, first pray. Just simply ask God, very, very easily, Lord, what is it you want for my life? And then they need some help to work through that prayer, to take the prayer into action. That's where they then call my office. My office is at 330-744-8451, and simply ask for the Vocations office, or go on to youngstownvocations.org and go into that website. There's a link to the Vocations, or they can go to youngstownvocations.org as well, and that will help them connect. There are discernment groups, there are prayer aids, there are books, there are many resources that we can use to help them understand how is God truly calling that person.
Well, we certainly appreciate your time on our show today.
Thank you for having me.
Wish you well in your work in your ministry.
Well, thank you.
Vocations. It's so important and so vital in the church today.
Thank you very much.
Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
Hi, I'm Mark Quinn. As I grew up on the south side of Chicago, the Dominican Sisters of Springfield not only taught me, but formed me in my Catholic faith. The sisters worked for very, very little. Now as they've gotten older, they have no savings to fall back on. And we benefited from their sacrifice. And I think it's time that we recognize that much of what we are today, we are because of what sisters did for us. It's our turn to help them out in their hour of need. They don't ask for a lot. They embrace the simple life. I owe them so much. That's why I make an annual donation to the Retirement Fund for Religious. Do you remember the religious men and women who shaped your life? Say thank you to them by donating to the Retirement Fund for Religious at your local parish. Join me. Share in the care.
Welcome back to our show. We're talking about vocations. And joining me in the second part is Dan Finnerty, who is now in his pastoral year. And Dan, it's nice to have you on the show today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Father.
If you could, before we talk a little bit specifically about what you're doing right now, if you could give us a little background as to where you're from, where you grew up, where you went to school.
Well, I am from Poland, Ohio. I've been a lifelong member of Holy Family Parish there. Went to Holy Family School growing up. And then afterwards, I went to Cardinal Mooney for 4 years, where I graduated.
And was it at Cardinal Mooney, or was it in grade school that you felt the call to priesthood. Can you remember when exactly that was?
I do remember. It was actually after high school. I was in the University of Akron, and it was while I was there that I kind of had the feel of that call. And so I remember looking more into it. I called my pastor, Monsignor Connell, and he kind of helped guide me along, and he said, well, Dan, I think you ought to try to be a diocesan priest. So I said, okay. And then that very next fall is when I entered seminary.
Now, when you felt the call, when you were in college, was it something that you had an inkling of like earlier on in your life, or was it something that just all of a sudden you felt a call? Because there's a lot of people that are out there listening, and some people may be in the same situation that you are in college and kind of wondering what I'm going to do, and maybe feeling or thinking that this is the direction that my life should go. What was your experience, and what would you share with them to respond to that?
Well, looking back, I could see there were signs, growing up. Like, I used to always love to serve Mass, try and help out whenever I could, things of that at the parish. But I would say it kind of came upon me suddenly. I was at a time where I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do with my life, had no real clear direction. And then I was just I felt inspired. Maybe I should do something with the church. After some thought, I thought, maybe I'm called to be a priest. And so that's kind of how that started.
And tell us now a little bit about your schooling, your academics in preparation for the priesthood. Where are you studying? Some of the subjects that you're studying.
Mm-hmm. Well, when I entered, I went to a college seminary. That was at the Pontifical College Josephinum in Columbus, Ohio. And there, that was kind of basically get an undergraduate degree. I myself got a bachelor's in history, but it was mostly a lot of philosophical studies. Once I had graduated, I moved on to major seminary at Mount St. Mary's of the West, located in Cincinnati. And there, that was a lot more, it is more theological studies. This past year, for example, I did sacramental theology, moral theology, some biblical courses, things of that sort.
When you study in preparation for the priesthood, is there any particular area of study that you feel drawn to, or that you're more excited about? I know when I was in the seminary a million years ago, that there were certain parts of the study of theology that I really enjoyed, and one of those for me was sacred scripture. Mm-hmm. Is there a particular area that you really enjoy?
Mm-hmm. Well, me being a history major, I've always loved history, and so church history is something that really interests me, just to see, where certain things came from, how teachings and practices developed over time, and how they've changed, how the times have changed, and how the church has responded to those changes. Now, we haven't gotten much into that for me currently. Once I get back into school, we'll get more into that in terms of schooling, but just doing some reading on my own. And also, I've always been interested in scripture as well.
Now, when you were at school at the Mount, you also did some pastoral work in local parishes. What were some of the things that you did in a parish?
Now, in the parish, I would say that, this past year we did a lot of work with RCIA. So we were assigned to a parish to basically be on the RCIA team, be with all the scrutinies, obviously go to the Vigil Mass and all that. So that was actually a very good learning experience. Plus I like the experience in that, I enjoy teaching. And so I was put in a good position, to help better explain the faith, things of that sort. And then the year before that, we did a social ministry project. And so for that, what I did is I worked in soup kitchen, actually the St. Vincent de Paul soup kitchen in downtown Youngstown here in the diocese.
Now, we know now you're on your pastoral year. Explain, first of all, what the pastoral year is all about.
The pastoral year is about, it takes place after 2 years of theology. We basically spend an entire year at a parish, learning, observing, really getting involved, really figuring out what is parish life about. So for me to help better discern, is this something I'm really called to? Being up at Mass, getting to Mass every day, trying out all different ministries, making yourself available and flexible, living in a rectory, really just getting a sense of this is what diocesan parish life is about, and am I able to live this kind of life?
The interesting thing is that you're in 3 parishes right now, and as part of this reconfiguration that we're experiencing here in the diocese, you're up in the Ashtabula area and working with those 3 parishes. Tell us initially about your experience with that and how different that was, perhaps, instead of working with just one parish.
Well, it was certainly very different. I had been on 2 previous summer assignments, and it was at a single parish, one staff, one building, very easy to get around. Here it was different, obviously, because the rectory is at one location, the ministerial offices are at another location, the business office is at another location, where all 3 worship sites have remained open. And so it's a little tough on everyone trying to get that. Mass times got shifted. People are trying to go to different places and all sort of things like that. But it was also seeing how the people of 3 different parishes coming together. They've been working together. They've been collaborating with each other for some time. And so even right now, witnessing this transition to where everyone truly becomes one parish, with one pastor, one pastoral council, all these ministries coming together to serve the entire Ashtabula area instead of just their little corners of the city.
In your experience so far, what has been one of the greatest blessings that you've experienced that has affirmed your call as a priest?
I would say right now in my short time there, I would say is the willingness of people to work together to get through this. This is, a change of this nature is never easy for anyone. There are sacrifices that have to be made, things that got to be changed, but I feel that, for the most part, people have been very cooperative and very open about, letting this happen and doing the best we can with this. There's a lot of new opportunities here that can be done through this.
Now, we know that oftentimes when parishes merge or combine or collaborate, there's has been a change of name. What's the new name of the parishes up in Ashtabula?
The new name is Our Lady of Peace Parish. And so that was decided amongst the members there. And so it was formally installed October 7th. That was the Feast of Our Lady of the Rosary.
Is there any reason why the community geared towards that name of Our Lady of Peace?
Well, I don't really know all the details. I really haven't talked about that much yet with the people there. But I think it's just, it's a very good name. 2 of the parishes themselves were dedicated to Mary. There's Our Lady of Mount Carmel, there's Mother of Sorrows, and then the other one is St. Joseph's. Now, all 3 worship sites still hold those names. So I would go to church at St. Joseph's or Mother of Sorrows or Our Lady of Mount Carmel. But altogether, the parish is Our Lady of Peace.
Now, we're getting down to the last few minutes of our time together. Can you let someone know who might be watching that that might have this this feeling inside of them that somehow they're called for something else than what they're doing right now, and that call is perhaps exploring the priesthood. What would be something you would share with them to give them some encouragement?
Well, I would say right now is, first of all, always pray about it. Always take this to God. Always ask Him, is this, I'm feeling, I might be called to some type of service for the church, is this for me? What, is this what I'm being called to? So prayer about it, and I would say another thing is, kind of be open about it, for me personally, when I talk to people, I said, I'm going into the seminary. Some people said, they were very surprised, and others were said, you know what, Dan, that makes a lot of sense. I can see that for you. And so I got encouragement that way as well. But, most importantly, keep praying about it. Keep going to Mass. If possible, spend time in front of the Blessed Sacrament. Just spend time with the Lord about this, and then He will guide you.
Well, Dan, we certainly appreciate your presence on our show today. We certainly wish you lots of blessings and good wishes, not only in your pastoral assignment up in Ashtabula, but also in your coming year and two in preparation for ordination. God bless you.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you for being with us. Have a nice day, and God be with you.
The Church at Home has been a production of CTNY, the Catholic Television Network of Youngstown. Your program host was Father James Korda.